Okay, we all say don't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
But really, come on, that cover, that's the first thing we see.
Yeah.
It's that first impression. And today we're going a deep dive into crafting those book covers.
Hmm.
Not just ones that look stunning, but ones that actually help us sell more copies.
That's the goal.
Yeah. You've poured your heart into this book, all this creativity, and now you're ready to share it with the world. What's that very first thing a reader sees?
The cover.
The cover. It's like having the silent salesperson working for you 24/7.
It's so true. And it really is fascinating how much more a book cover is than just, how it looks.
Yeah.
To be really effective, it has to understand your audience, the psychology of the reader, and it has to reflect what your story is really about.
So much goes into it. The guide we're looking at really emphasizes knowing your audience.
Hmm.
Can you talk a bit more about that? Why is that so important? And how does knowing your audience change how you actually design the cover?
Well, just imagine for a second that you're in a bookstore, right? And you're looking at all these covers. The cover that grabs a young adult who loves fantasy, it's going to look very different from a cover that someone would pick up if they're, say, looking for like a business book, a strategy guide.
Oh, totally.
Even the fonts would be different. Like that fantasy cover might have big, bold lettering, kind of whimsical even. But a business book, you'd probably see something sleek and modern.
Yeah, like picking the right outfit. You wouldn't wear a ball gown to, I don't know, a business meeting.
Exactly.
So true. The guide also mentions market research.
Yeah.
How can authors, I guess, go beyond just looking at bestseller lists to really understand what makes a cover work?
Well, it's not just about, copying what's popular, right? It's
Yeah.
about understanding why those covers are successful. What are they doing visually that works? What emotions are they tapping into? Think about it like if you were writing a cozy mystery, right? And you see all these bestsellers, those covers, they all have cats on them and teacups and these warm colors, there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah.
They've tapped into that aesthetic that the readers are looking for.
It makes you want to curl up with a cup of tea and a good book.
Exactly.
So it's about spotting those patterns, figuring out what's working,
Yeah,
and understanding the psychology behind it all.
exactly.
Okay, but what about people like me? I'm no design guru.
Right.
But the guide mentions some tools that are supposed to be pretty user-friendly, like Canva, there's BookBrush, there's Adobe Express, and GIMP.
Yep.
What are they like? Can you break them down for us a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Canva, it's amazing for beginners. Super easy to use. It's all drag and drop. They have all these templates already made for you. So even if you've never designed anything in your life, you can still make something that looks really professional.
That's great. It can feel really intimidating, to design your own cover. So
Yeah.
that's encouraging.
Totally. Now, if you're okay with a bit of a learning curve, GIMP is really powerful. It's free software, and it gives you a lot of control.
Okay.
And then there's BookBrush. It's got this super cool feature where you can actually see what your cover would look like on a 3D book. Really helpful.
Wow. So many choices. Okay, so let's say we've picked our design tool. We're feeling creative. We're ready to go. What are the must-have elements on every book cover? What can't we forget?
Well, the guide breaks it down really well. You need the title, of course, the subtitle, the author's name, imagery, the color scheme, and, for print books, don't forget the spine and the back cover.
Right.
Each part, it's got a job to do, attracting readers and getting that message across.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit. Let's start with the title and the subtitle.
Right.
What should we be thinking about when we're picking our fonts and deciding how to lay everything out?
Well, first things first, it has to be legible.
Right. People have to be able to read it.
Exactly. You want a font that fits your genre, but it also has to be super clear and easy to read. And think about how most people see books online these days, those little thumbnails.
Yeah.
That tiny image is often the first thing people see.
Sure.
So a thriller title,
Yeah.
you might want to use a really bold font, something that makes an impact,
Like what?
like Impact or Roboto Slab.
Oh, okay.
Something that creates a sense of suspense. But a romance novel, you'd probably go with a more flowing, elegant script.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
It's amazing how much personality a font can have. I've definitely been drawn to a book just because of the font on the cover. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah, totally.
What about you listeners? Has that ever happened to you? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear about it.
And then you've got the imagery, right? This is where you can really showcase what your book is about, what the mood is.
The guide really stresses using high-quality images that fit the genre. You can't just throw any old picture on there. You can't have a generic sunset photo on a historical fiction novel that's set in, I don't know, ancient Rome,
Yeah.
it just wouldn't work.
You're totally right. It needs to be something evocative, something that fits the story. Like that historical fiction cover, it might have architectural details or clothing from that time period. And a fantasy novel, you might see mythical creatures or these amazing
That's
landscapes.
about painting a picture, right?
Yeah, a visual picture that makes people curious and draws them in.
Now, what about the back cover and the spine, especially for print books?
hmm
Why are they so important?
Well, think about it. The spine, it's like your book's billboard on a bookshelf.
Okay.
It's got to stand out, grab people's attention so they want to pick it up. And the back cover, that's your chance to hook them with a great blurb, tell them a little about the author, and, put in those awesome reviews if you have them.
Yeah, it's like the book's resume,
Exactly.
showing off its best qualities.
And then there's color. Color psychology, it's so important. Colors, they have such a powerful effect on us,
Definitely.
how we feel. And the colors you pick for your cover, they can make a huge difference.
The guide goes into this in detail. It talks about how blue, it often makes people think of trust, like a sense of calm. And red's all about passion and intensity. It's amazing how colors can influence us without us even realizing it.
It's true. I mean, think about it. Would you ever pick up a mystery novel if it had a cover that was like bright yellow and super cheerful?
I don't know, maybe. But you're right, it doesn't quite fit, does it?
Not really. You got to match those colors to the mood of the book, the genre.
Yeah, it's like setting the mood with lighting, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't use the same lighting for a horror movie as you would for a romantic comedy. So, how can authors figure out what colors work best for their book? Are there, rules they can follow or resources to check out?
Yeah, there are some basic associations, like we said, blue for trust, red for passion, but you really have to understand what your story is about, what feelings you want to evoke in the reader.
Okay.
So a dark thriller, you'd probably go with darker colors, something intense. But for a light romantic story, you might pick softer colors, pastels, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. You want that visual harmony between the colors and what the story's all about. Now, the guide also mentions these things called templates, especially important if you're using Amazon KDP. So what are templates exactly? And why do we need them?
Okay, templates, they're basically like pre-made layouts, and they make sure that your cover meets all the requirements for printing and, when you're selling online.
Okay.
They have all these guidelines for stuff like the trim size, the bleed area, safe zones, all the technical things that most of us don't even think about. But they're really important if you want your cover to look good, both when it's printed and online.
So even if you don't know a lot about design, using a template can help you avoid some of those mistakes.
Totally.
Speaking of mistakes, the guide talks a lot about testing your cover design.
Yeah.
Getting feedback before you finalize it. Have you ever, shown a design to someone and they gave you feedback that totally changed how you saw it?
Oh, all the time.
Right. It's so easy to get stuck in your own head when you're working on something.
Yeah. Fresh eyes, it's so helpful.
The guide mentions this platform, PickFu, for getting feedback. How does that work?
Oh, PickFood's great. You can get feedback really quickly, and it's unbiased. Basically, you upload your cover designs, and then they show them to a bunch of potential readers, and you can ask specific questions like which cover is more eye-catching or which one best fits the genre. It's like having your own little focus group, but just for your cover.
That's amazing. Takes all the guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
Now, what about just using social media or those author groups to get feedback?
Those are great, too. Social media, you can connect directly with the people you want to read your book,
Yeah.
And author groups, those are full of writers who understand how important a good cover is. And they can give you really helpful advice.
It's like having this whole community of people, cheering you on and giving you honest feedback. Now, sometimes, the guide says, even if we try our best, we might just need to bring in a professional.
Yeah, sometimes.
When would you say it's time to, hire a designer?
Well, if you've tried designing your own cover
Yeah.
and you're just not happy with it, or maybe you just don't have the time or you don't really want to learn all the design stuff, hiring a professional can be a really good idea. And there are so many talented designers out there. You can find them on Fiverr, Upwork, 99 Designs.
Yeah, it's like having a stylist for your book. What's the most important thing to do when you're looking for a designer? And you want to make sure that working together goes well.
You have to give them a really clear brief. Basically, it's a document that tells them what you want your cover to look like. The genre, who you're trying to reach, maybe some examples of covers you really like, and anything specific you want, like colors or fonts or images.
So it's all about communicating clearly and finding a designer who really gets what you're going for. Now, the guide also talks about some common mistakes that people make when they're designing a book cover.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of those, and how can we avoid them?
Okay, one of the biggest ones, trying to cram too much onto the cover,
Okay, yeah.
too many elements, too much going on. Simplicity is key. You don't want to overwhelm people with too much visual noise,
Yeah, it gets confusing, right? Like you're trying to say too much at once, and the message gets lost.
Totally. Another big mistake is using low-quality images.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Your cover has to look sharp and professional, whether it's online or printed. If you use blurry pictures or images that are all pixelated, it makes your book look amateurish.
Yeah, it's like showing up to a job interview in a wrinkled shirt. Not a good look.
Exactly. And you can't forget about those thumbnails. Most people are going to see your book online first as a tiny thumbnail on Amazon or somewhere else.
Right.
So your cover has to be readable and look good, even when it's really small.
Oh, that's so true. You have to make sure people can still read the title and see the author's name.
Mm.
What about staying on brand? Why is that important when you're designing a cover?
Your cover, it should reflect the overall tone and message of your book. Like, you wouldn't want a cover that's dark and edgy if your story is a lighthearted romance.
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense.
You want to be consistent.
It's about having a clear identity, right? Something that resonates with your audience.
Exactly. You don't want your cover to promise one thing and then the book is totally different. And this brings up something really interesting, something a lot of people don't think about enough. The emotional impact of a book cover.
Yeah, that feeling you get.
Have you ever seen a cover and it just instantly made you feel something, like a memory or an emotion?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I remember when I first saw the cover of The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenstern. It was all dark with these swirling images, and it just made me feel this sense of mystery. I knew I had to read that book.
That's what a good cover does. It hooks you.
What about our listeners? Have you ever seen a book cover that had that kind of impact on you? Tell us about it in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How a cover can just pull you in like that.
Totally. Like a portal to another world before you even open the book.
Exactly. Speaking of being pulled in, let's talk about visual storytelling for a bit.
Okay.
How can we use the cover, to give readers a taste of what the story's about?
Without giving the whole thing away, right?
Right, exactly. It's a tricky balance. Like, think about a movie trailer. They want to get you excited, make you curious, but they don't want to spoil the whole movie. A good book cover, it does the same thing. It uses symbols, the way things are arranged, even the empty space, to create that intrigue.
Can you give us an example, like something specific?
Yes, sir. Imagine, a single figure standing against a stormy sky.
Okay, I can see it.
You instantly get that feeling of mystery, maybe some danger. Or what about a couple looking into each other's eyes with this warm, golden light around them?
Yeah, that's totally different.
Right. That one's all about intimacy, romance, that connection.
It's like planting a seed, right, in the reader's mind. That little bit of curiosity that makes them want to keep reading.
Exactly. And don't forget about typography, the fonts you use. They're a big part of visual storytelling, too.
Because fonts have personality, too.
They absolutely do. Like a really bold sans serif font, something like Helvetica or Futura. Those fonts, they can feel strong, modern, maybe even urgent, but a delicate script. That could be elegant, romantic, maybe hinting at a historical setting.
It's like picking the right voice for a narrator. The font sets the tone right away.
That's a great way to put it. The guide, it actually recommends trying out different font combinations to find ones that work well together and, really support what the story is all about.
So it's not just about picking a font you like. It's about finding the font that best serves the story.
Exactly.
But of course, it has to be readable, no matter what.
Absolutely. I mean, you can have the most beautiful design in the world, but if people can't read the title or see who wrote the book...
It defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly. The cover's failed. The guide also talks a lot about testing your cover with your audience.
Yeah, makes sense.
Even if you really love your design, it's so important to get that feedback.
Why?
Because what we think looks great, it might not work for the people we want to read our book. You need to hear from them, see how they react to the cover.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What emotions does it evoke for them? Does it clearly show what genre the book is? What the theme is?
Like doing a test screening for a movie.
Exactly.
Right.
You want to see how the audience responds before you release it to the world.
Yeah.
So how do you test a book cover?
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, we talked about PickFu, right? And using social media, those author groups, you can also just share it with friends, family, anyone who fits your target audience.
Get those different perspectives.
Yeah, and remember, even if you've hired a professional designer, your opinion still matters.
Definitely.
It's your book, your story. Don't be afraid to speak up. Make sure the final design is something you're happy with.
As we're wrapping up this deep dive, I keep thinking about how a really great book cover, it's so much more than just a nice image.
Hmm.
It's like the essence of the story all wrapped up in this visual package. It's an invitation, to come in and explore.
It really is. And it shows just how powerful creativity can be, how much thoughtful design can achieve.
It's about grabbing that heart of the story
Hmm.
and like translating it into something visual, something
Mm.
that speaks to people on that emotional level.
That's it, exactly.
This has been an awesome journey, exploring this whole world of book cover design.
Hmm.
We've talked about understanding your audience, using color psychology, even mastering that visual storytelling.
So much good stuff.
What are some of the key things you hope our listeners will take away from this?
I'd say know your audience, do your research, experiment, don't be afraid to try new things. Get feedback, lots of it, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yeah,
Creating a book cover, it should be a joyful process.
a celebration of the story you've created.
Exactly.
Well said. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even inspiring. If you have any thoughts or experiences you want to share, any questions about book cover design, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, happy reading, everyone.